My husband, 36, may have cheated on me with my dead best friend, and had an affair baby. I'm 33, and my husband, 36, may have cheated on me with my dead best friend. I don't even know where to start. The past 6 months have been an absolute clusterfuck, and it only seems to be getting worse. My best friend since elementary school, who I'll call Alice, passed away in February from cancer. She had a 2-year-old daughter who went into the custody of her mom after she passed away, who I'll call Alexis. Last month Alexis showed up on our doorstep unannounced, telling my husband he needs to take responsibility for his child and either take custody or start finally paying child support. She says that Alice had told her when her daughter was born who the father was, but didn't want anything to do with him. To answer the inevitable, Alice was a traveling nurse and made a lot of money, which is the only reason I can think of for why she didn't go for child support. During this conversation my husband had the worst panic attack he's ever had, so we had to end the conversation before I could get more details. My husband's story is, I don't even know. He said that Alice's daughter is probably his, but that it isn't what I think. Almost 3 years ago we threw a large housewarming party as we just moved into our dream home, after I finally finished residency and was set to make real money for once. Alice was in town and set to be at the party, but I was called into work before she got there. I didn't get back till after 3 a.m, the party was winding down, my husband was passed out upstairs, and Alice had already left the party, which at the time I did find strange as we hadn't seen each other in months. My husband claims he woke up in the middle of the night to Alice on top of him, but he passed out again before he could say anything. He claims he never told me because he was worried I wouldn't believe him, which I don't know if I do. He showed me some texts he sent his best friend the next day asking for his advice about him, thinking someone took advantage of him. But if he cheated he could have had that conversation as evidence, especially since he never said Alice specifically. Ever since the party he has been very distant with Alice, and after she had her daughter he would even find excuses not to be around the house when she would visit at all. I don't know if that's because he cheated, or if Alice did actually grape him and this was his trauma response. Honestly, I don't know what to do. I've known Alice since we were children and she had never come across as that kind of person. But I've also known my husband for over a decade and he's not once ever given the inclination of a cheater. He's an attractive guy and I've seen the looks he gets at the gym and he's never even given more than a glance. What the hell should I do? How do I figure out what the truth is here when Alice isn't even around to defend herself? She never even implied she liked my husband, let alone want to sleep with him. I told my husband he needs to get a DNA test before anything is decided on the child's part, but in the meantime he needs to move out while I think about what I'm going to do here. Tildyar. Husband maybe has an affair baby. He claims he was taken advantage of by my dead best friend.
Let's hear some questions from the community and the answers from the author of this post.
Did Alice behave suspiciously when she visited you? Did she mention the affair?
Not that I noticed. She'd always been at least a little standoffish towards him as she thought I could do better. The first time she visited after she gave birth, she asked where he was since he wasn't home for the first time, but she never asked again after that. I hadn't thought about that actually, thank you. That's a good point. She always thought I could do better than him. So if it was an affair you'd think she would have told me on her deathbed at least.
Does your husband drink?
Not at all. He rarely drinks, and generally only at parties which at our ages are few and far between. He works a tough and stressful job, so I figured once he was buzzed he laid down and fell asleep. Not that he had drank more than normal or anything like that.
Did Alice ever name the father of her baby?
She told me it was a man she met, while in another state for work. Short-term fling.
Wait, I get that you need to process all this, but you've told the potential victim of sexual assault that he needs to leave his home, his safe place, and you, his safe person. I think you've jumped the gun a bit here, and shunned your life mate, who may have been raped.
Yes, I'm starting to realize I've made a terrible mistake.
Women go decades without admitting when they are abused because of fear of people not believing them. I'm going to be honest, Men will go twice as long and preferably take it to the grave because almost always and automatically told it's not even possible for a man to be abused. I know you have to go on instinct, but his story makes sense with the texts he sent his friend. He also would hope to never be around the woman he is sure abused him, again. Which is why he made himself scarce after the fact. If he's a smart man like you claim, he would not have wanted you alone with Alice basically ever because she could reveal an affair. He would have tried to separate your bond. Instead he hid, because she couldn't really say she raped him. You say she wasn't a fan of his at all. She thought you could do better. So why wouldn't she spin it as he came onto her? It's because she was the one in the wrong.
Thank you. I don't know what it is about this part, but it just clicks with me. You're absolutely right. With her level of disdain, if it was an affair, she certainly would have told me, if only to separate us, especially on her deathbed. I was in the room with her, holding one of her hands. She obviously took this to her grave, and the only reason she would is if she took advantage of him. Thank you. The update the same day. After talking with you, I've come to the realization that my husband is being truthful. My best friend abused him. Several people pointed out that with Alice not liking my husband, if it was an affair, she would have told me when she was dying, if only to separate us. You're absolutely right. I was there in the room while she passed. I held her hands for days. We talked about so much. If it was just an affair, she would have told me. But if she took advantage of my husband, she wouldn't have said a word. That's the type of thing horrible people take to the grave. I've also come to the realization that I made a terrible mistake asking my husband to leave for a few days while I gather my thoughts. Not to make excuses, but losing my best friend to cancer, a long cancer fight at that, was brutal. To say that I was devastated wouldn't do it justice. That it happened only 6 months ago, I'm still feeling it every day. So to have this thrown on me, it's like I'm losing her all over again. Either she betrayed me and fucked my husband, or she betrayed me and grabbed my husband. Not only have I lost her, but now I've lost the good memories, an entire lifetime's worth. It was impossible for me to look at him and not also see her, and be struck with the horror and realization of that loss all over again. I felt I needed to be able to break down, grieve, and think without the fresh wave of loss I got every time I saw him. It was wrong of me to ask him to leave, you're right though. And as of a few minutes ago I've righted this wrong. I called my husband, I apologized, and told him I believe him, and begged him to come home. He'll be here in half an hour at most, and I'm going to support my husband the way I know he would have supported me. I've been an off and on Reddit user for several years, and sometimes the advice given on subreddits like these can be a bit hit or miss. But today you guys did good. You've helped me realize not only that I was wrong and being stupid at that, but that I was hurting the person that needed me the most. I was selfish. I have no idea what we're going to do as far as the potential daughter is concerned, but I can assure you we'll deal with it together. That's going to take a lot of time and probably a lot of therapy to grieve this new loss. I feel numb now, as though I'll never cry again. My best friend took advantage of my husband, which means she was no friend of mine. She flaunted it, coming to my house, sitting with me and gabbing. She brought her child here, trying to rub it in his face, right in front of me. She tortured the man I loved, and I was an unknowing party to it. I feel sick to my stomach over how many times she came over, just to hold it over him. I'm honestly at a loss on how to make that up to him. If you all have any ideas, please feel free to give them to me. I think I'll need all the help I can get. Tomorrow I'm going to take a leave of absence from work, just until we can figure out our next steps, and we can get our heads on straight. Thank you everyone.
Let's listen to some question from the community and answers provided by the author of that post.
How did his friend respond to your husband's text?
He asked for more details, but my husband didn't give any.
And how did your husband react to Alice's death initially? Did his response seem normal, or like what you would have expected?
I honestly don't know. I was going through a lot at the time, understandably. I didn't notice any changes in him.
Honestly, I'd be inclined to believe your husband. Sending the text preemptively to cover his cheating seems like a stretch, and it makes more sense that they are genuine. I feel like faking everything else just implies an excessive level of manipulation, and it sounds like you don't have a reason to believe he'd do that. Also, him not telling you because he thought you wouldn't believe him sounds like it might not be an entirely incorrect judgment at this point.
I'm starting to feel that way too, and I think I might be a terrible wife.
His reaction screams trauma response to me. Not being believed is a victim's worst nightmare. It's hard to be rational with these types of events. But could she have slipped him something? Did she have a history of one-night stands? Could they have been extra chummy because you weren't there and they were drinking?
She was very free-spirited and loved to regale me with her stories of being out on the road. She was very pretty, so you can imagine she didn't do without when she wanted. As for them being chummy, I would have said no if you'd asked me in June. He was always nice to her, but she didn't like him much.
I find it odd she specifically asked about him the first time the baby was over and that she didn't approve of him. On what basis?
She knew I dreamed of being a doctor and was going places in life, while my husband from all outward appearances doesn't work that kind of job. He does contract work for companies and the government in project planning. She figured I could and should have done better.
Lawyer up and then paternity test. Can you have a calm and collected conversation with your spouse that you want to believe in him, but you're also a mess emotionally and that you need a mediator together like a therapist? But mostly lawyers up now. I'm so sorry you're dealing with this.
Thank you, I appreciate it. My husband is dealing with the DNA stuff and should be contacting a lawyer as well. I'm not sure yet on a therapist, but I'll likely need one eventually. Thank you for listening to this story. Let me know in the comments if you agree with the community. What would you have done in that situation? And for those who stayed to the end, thank you. If you like this type of content, feel free to like the video and subscribe if you haven't already. Take care of yourself and your loved ones. See you soon.